Have you ever wondered what truly awaits beyond the threshold of 70? Not the greeting card version with endless sunsets and carefree laughter, but the authentic journey that no one quite prepares you for. As we stand at the precipice of our later years, we often find ourselves asking, did anyone tell us the whole truth about what happens after 70? Who speaks honestly about the profound transformation that occurs when we cross into our 8th decade of life? I'm Vernon, and today I'm going to share what decades of observing, researching, and personally experiencing this transition has taught me. These aren't comfortable truths. They're the realities that many discover only after they've arrived. But here's what I promise. Understanding these truths now will transform how you navigate the years ahead. Ancient wisdom has long held special reverence for the later stages of life. This tension between reverence and reality is what we'll explore today. The philosopher Seneca once observed that old age is an incurable disease, yet also wrote that as long as you live, keep learning how to live. This paradox captures the essence of our discussion. Today's insights aren't meant to discourage but to illuminate. By facing these 5 harsh truths, we transform them from stumbling blocks to stepping stones. This is knowledge I wish someone had shared with me years ago, not to instill fear, but to help prepare with clear eyes and an open heart. And when we reach truth number 3 we discussed today, you may find it completely shifts your perspective on what constitutes a meaningful life after 70. Stay with me. This journey through wisdom might be the most important minutes you invest in your future self. If you find value in this perspective, consider subscribing to my channel and sharing this video with someone who might benefit. Now, let's begin our exploration of what really happens after 75. Harsh truth seniors need to know. The greatest wealth is health. This ancient wisdom from the Roman poet Virgil resonates more profoundly after 70 than at any other life stage. Yet it's precisely at this juncture that our physical reality undergoes its most dramatic transformation. My neighbor Thomas, once an avid tennis player who prided himself on his athletic prowess, described it to me as waking up in a stranger's body. At 73, he found himself unable to perform movements that had been effortless just a few years earlier. It wasn't just that he was slower, he shared during our morning walks. It was that his body responded to his commands differently, sometimes not at all. This isn't merely about aches and pains, though those certainly increase. It's about a fundamental recalibration of your relationship with your physical self. Research from the Journal of Aging Studies shows that 83% of adults over 70 report feeling a sense of bodily estrangement, a disconnection between how they perceive themselves internally and their physical capabilities. What science tells us is happening. After 70, muscle mass typically declines at a rate of 3 to 5% per decade. Balance mechanisms deteriorate, with the National Institute on Aging reporting that 1 in 3 adults over 65 experiences a fall each year. Even our sensory perception changes. Colors may appear less vibrant, sounds less distinct. For those in their late 80s and beyond, these changes accelerate. A 2023 study in The Gerontologist found that those over 85 experience a more rapid decline in functional abilities, with approximately 43% requiring assistance with at least one daily activity. However, the same research reveals remarkable resilience. 34% of nonagenarians maintain independent functioning with appropriate environmental modifications. But here's what wisdom teaches us about this truth. This transformation invites a profound shift in how we value ourselves. When physical prowess can no longer be our primary source of identity, we're challenged to discover deeper aspects of our worth. As Socrates wisely noted, the unexamined life is not worth living. And it's often only when our physical capabilities diminish that we truly begin this examination. My friend Eleanor, at 76, described this realization beautifully. When she could no longer do all the things that once defined her, she discovered parts of herself she never knew existed. Her patience, her capacity for deep listening, her appreciation for subtle beauty, these emerged only when her physical world contracted. The practical wisdom here isn't to fight against this change, but to adapt with intention. Consider establishing a relationship with healthcare providers who specialize in geriatric medicine, developing preventative routines that preserve mobility. The research shows even modest movement can maintain independence, creating environments that accommodate changing abilities before crises force sudden adjustments. The body's transformation after 70 isn't a sentence. It's an invitation to evolve how we define ourselves and what we value. So, if this reflection has stirred something in you, maybe a quiet yes, or even just a thoughtful pause, I invite you to honor that moment. Leave a comment with what part of this truth resonated most with you, or share your own experience adapting to change. Just as our bodies begin to shift in unexpected ways after 70, so too does the social fabric of our lives, often in ways we might never have anticipated. The ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius once observed, "At 70, I could follow what my heart desired, without transgressing what was right." This wisdom acknowledges the quiet freedom that age can bring. But what it doesn't mention is how profoundly our social world begins to contract as we enter that freedom. After 70, our connections change, not only because we lose people to distance, illness, or death, but because the roles we've lived in for decades begin to dissolve. Retirement removes the daily scaffolding of workplace interactions. Friends move away, some into care facilities, others into deeper health battles or inner solitude. My colleague Richard, who just turned 75, once described it to me as a gradual emptying of the room. It wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was subtle. One friend stopped calling. Another moved across the country. Familiar rhythms began to fade. And the research confirms it. A study from the Journal of Gerontology found that by age 75, the average person's active social network has shrunk by nearly 30% compared to age 60. But numbers alone can't capture the quiet ache of watching your world gently fold inward. More complex still is how relationships transform. Spouses may shift into caregiving roles. Adult children become protectors. These changes, though born of love, often alter dynamics we once relied on. As our social world contracts, something else begins to take shape. Depth, meaning, intention. Psychologist Laura Carstenson's work on socio-emotional selectivity shows that older adults often choose fewer but more emotionally satisfying connections. The focus shifts from quantity to quality, from obligation to authenticity. So what can we do, practically and gently, to nurture this shift? Instead of trying to recreate what once was, we can begin to build new patterns. Invest now in the relationships that nourish you not out of habit, but out of mutual value. Develop comfort with technology that bridges distance, yes. It may feel unnatural at first, but small efforts can lead to deep connection. Create structures for consistency: a standing phone call, a regular coffee meetup, a Sunday dinner. Predictability becomes a new form of intimacy. Redefine community on your terms, perhaps through smaller gatherings, spiritual circles, or volunteering roles that suit your pace and energy. And remember, solitude and isolation are not the same. One drains, the other restores when chosen with intention. This shift in our social world also prepares us for the deeper emotional territory we'll explore in our next truth. one that touches the heart of autonomy, caregiving, and dignity in later life. But for now, if something in this reflection resonates, I invite you to like this video. It helps others discover these quiet conversations, often right when they need them most. And once our social world begins to narrow, we often find ourselves staring into quieter days and asking, what now? That brings us to the third truth. Our sense of purpose will be deeply challenged. He who has a reason to live can bear almost any how. Nietzsche's words echo louder after 70 than they ever did before. For decades, our purpose is often anchored in roles, our work, raising a family, supporting a community. But eventually, many of those roles dissolve, and we are left to ask a harder question. Who am I without them? My friend James, once a respected cardiologist, put it this way during dinner last month. Retirement felt like a free fall into irrelevance. For 40 years, he was someone people turned to in life. And death moments. Now, he finds himself drifting through days that no longer ask anything urgent of him. And the research affirms what James feels. A longitudinal study from the University of Michigan found that seniors who report a strong sense of purpose have a 15% lower mortality rate than those who feel adrift. But more than numbers, it's about meaning, about the quality of our final chapters. Part of what makes this truth so hard is that our culture doesn't teach us how to value being. We're trained to measure purpose through output, what we make, do, earn, or fix. But what about the quiet worth of presence, of insight, of simple being? In Japan, there's a concept called ikigai, the joy of living, found in small daily engagements. Purpose, it teaches, doesn't have to be grand to be life-giving. Take Sarah, whom I met at a writing workshop. She's 83, and each morning she writes one letter by hand to someone in her community. Not life-changing advice, just small observations, encouragement, or gentle questions. Her letters are an offering, a thread. They connect her to others in ways that feel essential. And perhaps that's where we begin too, not with reinvention, but with tiny acts of reconnection. Begin nurturing something that belongs only to you, not your profession, not your past. Something simple, perhaps painting, cooking, nature walks without urgency. Explore spiritual or philosophical traditions that speak to meaning beyond doing, traditions that help you practice being. Share a piece of your life with someone younger, a story, a mistake, a moment of clarity. You'd be surprised what becomes a lifeline for someone else. Purpose doesn't always announce itself with applause. Sometimes it's a quiet rhythm, the way morning light filters through the blinds, or the comfort of a familiar chair by the window. It's not found in who we were, but in how we show up right now. As we reflect on these first three truths, our changing bodies, our contracting social circles, and the quiet challenge of rediscovering purpose, we begin to understand. This stage of life isn't the end of the story. It's a change of tone, a shift in rhythm, but the music continues. What brings meaning to your days right now? Share in the comments. You never know who your story might touch. And as our sense of purpose shifts, so too does the question of control. Who gets to decide what our lives look like from here? This brings us to the fourth truth. Your autonomy will be increasingly questioned. Sometimes with good reason, often without. The philosopher Immanuel Kant defined autonomy as the capacity for self-governance, making informed decisions based on reason and personal values. For most of our adult lives, this freedom is assumed. After 70, that assumption begins to erode. My brother-in-law Robert, once fiercely independent, described this moment to me after a minor fall at 76. Suddenly, everyone was an expert on what was best for Haim except him. And the research backs him up. A study in the Gerontologist found that 68% of seniors experience some form of benevolent ageism, well-intentioned decisions made on their behalf, based on assumption rather than assessment. This connects directly to our second truth: how relationships transform. When children become protectors, the dynamic shifts. Concern becomes control. Dialogue becomes decision-making. And autonomy slowly, silently starts to slip away. Sometimes these interventions are necessary. Cognitive decline, physical risk, or medical needs may call for greater support. The challenge is knowing when help becomes overreach. My friend Elaine, 81, showed remarkable clarity. When her adult children raised concerns about her living alone, she didn't argue. Instead, she offered a compromise. She'll accept daily check-ins and a medical alert system, but she's staying in her home until she decides otherwise. She preserved her voice while honoring their care. This is the kind of wisdom we need, not resistance for its own sake, but clarity rooted in dignity. To protect your autonomy without conflict, consider these quiet yet powerful actions. Document your wishes while your decision-making capacity is strong and unquestioned. Legal clarity preserves your voice when memory may falter. Demonstrate competence through proactive health and financial habits. Initiate the hard conversations early before your family feels they must act on your behalf. Define the lines between where you want help and where you do not. Remember, independence and dignity are not the same. You can receive help without surrendering your humanity. This truth is perhaps the most delicate. It asks us to hold two realities at once: that needing support is not weakness, and that surrendering agency too soon is not wisdom. And as we prepare to enter the final reflection in this series, we carry forward this deeper question: not just, how do I age, but how do I remain myself while I do? And once we've faced the shifting ground of autonomy, what we can and cannot control, there remains one final, inescapable truth. We will be confronted with mortality. Not as an abstract idea, but as a presence in the room. To philosophize is to learn how to die. These words from Michel de Montaigne speak to our final truth, one that society works particularly hard to shield us from, yet becomes unavoidable after 70. Death transforms from a distant theoretical endpoint to a presence that increasingly makes itself known. Friends pass. Contemporaries receive terminal diagnoses. Obituaries feature familiar names with increasing frequency. The body's fragility becomes more apparent with each passing year. This proximity to mortality fundamentally alters our relationship with time. My friend Helen expressed it with stark clarity. She no longer buys green bananas. When she looks puzzled, she can't assume she'll be here when they ripen. This isn't merely gallows humor, it reflects a profound shift in temporal perspective that research confirms. Gerontologists call it time perspective shift, where future time is perceived as increasingly finite, leading to fundamental changes in priorities and decision-making. But here lies the transformative potential of this truth. When we fully comprehend our mortality, we often discover an unprecedented clarity about what matters. Psychologist Irvin Yalom notes that confronting death anxiety can lead to what he calls awakening experiences, moments of profound meaning and connection. I witnessed this transformation in my colleague William. At 79, following a serious heart attack, he emerged with what he described as the gift of mortality awareness. He explained he suddenly understood he didn't have time for pretense or postponement. Each day isn't leading somewhere else. It's all there is. William redistributed his investments to enjoy more now rather than preserve for later. He reconciled with his estranged son after decades of silence. He began painting, something he'd always wanted to try but never found the time for. His life, by conventional measures, contracted. Yet by his account, it expanded immeasurably in depth and authenticity. And so perhaps that's the final invitation of aging, not escape from death, but intimacy with it. To embrace this truth with wisdom. Engage with philosophical and spiritual traditions that address mortality directly. Consider creating ethical wills or legacy projects that transmit what you've learned. Practice presence, the art of being fully engaged in each moment without projection into an uncertain future. Develop comfort, discussing end-of-life wishes with loved ones, transforming these conversations from taboo to gift. Remember that acknowledging mortality can heighten our appreciation for life rather than diminish it. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus observed, keep death and exile before your eyes each day, along with everything that seems terrible, and you will never have an impure thought, nor will you desire anything excessively. If something in today's reflection has touched you, please share this video so more people can know it. As we draw our exploration to a close, let's reflect on these 5 truths about life after 70. Your body becomes increasingly unfamiliar territory. Your social world contracts. Your sense of purpose faces profound challenges. Your autonomy comes under question. And finally, mortality becomes an imminent reality rather than an abstract concept. These truths may seem harsh, and indeed, they represent genuine challenges, but within each lies the seed of profound transformation. As Carl Jung observed, the afternoon of life is just as full of meaning as the morning, only its meaning and purpose are different. The wisdom of aging isn't found in denying these realities, but in engaging them consciously. When we do so, we discover that the later chapters of life aren't merely about managing decline, they're about a fundamental shift in how we experience being human. My invitation to you today is to begin this engagement now, regardless of your current age. Consider how these truths might reshape your priorities, your relationships, your definition of a life well lived. What wisdom have you discovered about life's later chapters that might illuminate the path for others? Please share your experience in the comment with someone who might benefit. Thank you for joining me today. If something here resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe, give this video a like, and join our community in the comments below.